I think we're live. Keep your fingers crossed. We're kind of in a signal, like a low signal area, so I'm really hoping that everything will stay good, that the quality will be okay. Thank you guys for joining me. If you don't know who I am, my name is Kayla Cox. I am the founder of this here channel. I also wrote a book called The Laid Back Guide to Intermittent Fasting, How I Lost over 80 pounds eating whatever. Well, I kind of screwed up the title there. How I lost over 80 pounds and kept it off, eating whatever I wanted. And that's a pretty good introduction to me. I've lost over 80 pounds using intermittent fasting, mainly OMAD. And I do these lives every week at this time in order to answer questions people have about intermittent fasting, about weight loss in general, mindset, walking 6 miles a day. And then I also like to talk about a topic that I think will be helpful on the weight loss journey. So tonight's topic is pushing past doubt, which I think will be really helpful because it's certainly something I had to deal with a lot in the beginning, especially. And when I look back over my journey, doubt was one of those things that kept me from making progress for a long time. In about, 2014, that's when I realized, like, I've got to get this weight off. I have to. I was in a Facebook photo, got tagged, and was just really, really embarrassed at how I looked. But I really didn't do anything about it. I actually, that first year, I just didn't know what to do, how to really lose the weight permanently. I had been on all the diets, right? But I just didn't know exactly how to lose the weight and keep it off. And so that doubt kept me from really committing. And so I thought it might be helpful to kind of go through some doubts I had about intermittent fasting specifically, and how I kind of dealt with that and pushed past that, and just other doubts in general. And hey, Darlene and Melanie, and Susan and Enid, I'm glad y'all are all here. One thing I wasn't sure about intermittent fasting specifically as a woman, because I thought it's going to mess up my hormones. I mean, I read like one article that said, oh, women shouldn't do fast longer than like 14 hours. And that scared me because I thought I don't want to, mess up my hormones. And that was a doubt that I had. That was one thing that kept me from really going with intermittent fasting. It appealed to me on the idea that you can just eat whatever you want, just not whenever you want. Like you just need to place some sort of time boundary around food. That really appealed to me because I knew I like to eat certain kinds of foods. And, I always go back to eating, just the traditional foods that I was brought up on, and that people around me were eating. And so that was one thing. The other big doubt that I had was, will intermittent fasting mess up my metabolism? I was really scared about that, which to me is pretty ironic. When I look back at that, I was like, it's like I thought to myself that I had this excellent metabolism already. Like, and the thing was, I was having a really hard time losing weight. So what was I trying to protect? I guess I was just trying to think, like, man, if it gets any worse than this, like because I really thought I had a bad metabolism. I thought, I guess if it will get any worse than this, then I'll never ever lose the weight. So those were a couple of doubts. And of course I had all the weight loss doubts, like, will I even be able to keep it off? Will I just regain it, and won't that be embarrassing? And there's just a lot of like self-doubt. But I did push past all of that. And one thing I was thinking about was, how did I do that? How did I go from doubting, really, really doubting that this would work? And that was one thing. I did experiment with it. And eventually I just said to myself, which is worse, remaining overweight and not trying this thing that seems like it might work? And then, and I could certainly foresee myself getting, type 2 diabetes and things like that. So I said, which is worse? And ultimately what I came down to was, not acting is a decision, or not, if you don't choose, that's still making a choice. And so, even though I had a lot of doubt, I just thought, I need to at least try it. And one thing also that's helpful, because a lot of times doubt is really just fear, right? And so, how to push past doubts and fears, and one thing that has been really helpful to me is to ask, what's the worst that could happen? What was the worst thing? And so what I started to think about, especially with hormones, I thought, okay, I'll try it. I'll give it, I'll just keep going with this. I'll keep trying intermittent fasting. And I started out with very, very short windows, and I pushed it out very gradually. I went very, very gradual with everything with intermittent fasting. And by doing it that way, by being gradual, that helped me. It was like taking little baby steps. It wasn't too drastic. And that kind of helped me stay like I was feeling in control. Like, okay, I'm not doing anything very drastic. It feels, easy. And I can always stop. And that was another thing I reminded myself. It's like the decisions you make most of the time they're completely reversible. Like I knew that I could stop intermittent fasting at any time, and so that's what I did. I said, okay, well, if it appears that my hormones are being messed up. So in other words, I figured the big indication for a woman, and this, I'm not a doctor, but my own personal opinion was, if my period starts to screw up, that's a big sign that it's messing with my hormones, and I don't want that to happen. But it never affected that at all. If anything, that whole thing was slightly better as far as like regularity and all of that. So that was one fear. And again, it took me taking a little bit of action, some baby steps, and not procrastinating anymore, and just saying, I'm going to try this. And so that was one thing that I did. Now, another thing was the metabolism. and then what I really started to realize was when I said that to myself, like, oh, I'm afraid that it's going to mess up my metabolism, I said, why am I so afraid of that? And the answer was like, well, because I want to be able to lose weight. And then I thought, right, like I want to lose weight. That's really what my goal is. I'm afraid to not lose weight. That's really my big fear is remaining overweight and having health problems. And certainly I was already starting to see that I was knocking myself out of opportunities, and just a lot of things were more difficult than they needed to be. And so that was something I just, again, told myself, if I'm losing weight, then obviously my metabolism is probably fine. And so I just decided, again, to take it slowly. And I did. I lost at a very slow rate, about 1 pound a week. But it was something that I had to, you still have to take action. At some point, you have to stop procrastinating and take action. And that usually can help remove those doubts, as long as you make a commitment to the plan. Because what can happen is, if you're sitting there and you're not sure on your plan, like you're doubting that, will this work, or will this mess me up, then you're most likely going to not stick with the plan. What I've noticed is, if people stick with it and are really consistent with it, they lose the weight. But it's when people are messing around with it too much, not really sticking to the plan, getting kind of all like, ooh, I'll try this and this, and then I'll do this, and then they're not consistent with any of it. That's generally what I've seen. And same with me, like whenever I would, have a lot of off-plan days or something like that, then that is when the weight loss would stall out. So that was, let's see. That was, I think, everything as far as, so remembering that whether you make a choice or not, a choice is still being made. Like if you sit there and say, well, I'm going to have to figure out, weight loss. Well, you're still choosing then to remain overweight. Like if you don't start taking action on it in some way, once I started really taking action, like the first, in 2014, I was like running 3 miles a day and trying really hard in that way. And then in 2015, I was going to the gym, and that is when I started to notice some results. Started going to the gym and started messing with intermittent fasting. when I got very clear on my plan, very sure of my plan, at that point in 2016, that's when I had the best results, consistent results over time. And that's when I lost the bulk of my weight. So, okay, and we've got a bunch of comments, so I'm going to go back through and see what people have been saying. And if you guys have questions about any of that I just talked about, let me know, or anything to add. So let's see here. Let's see. So Melanie, you're doing an 18.6 and you're completely off your diabetes meds. That is awesome. That is awesome. Congratulations. Hey, Petchkoel. So Valerie, you found your sweet spot at 22.2 and you love the encouragement from this group. That is awesome. I'm so glad, first of all, that you found your sweet spot. And then just stick with the sweet spot, I say. So many people will get so focused on like getting to OMAD. Like it's this, well, man, once you get to OMAD, then the weight's going to drop off. Not necessarily. I think you find what works for you. Again, my weight loss was about a pound a week, whether I was doing, 16.8, 18.6, and sometimes even like in 2015, I was even at a shorter fast because again, I was nervous about the hormonal things. But, I think mainly it's just consistency. Find out that place where you're like, this I can do this and I can stick with this for the long term, and you'll be great. Just stick with it. Anon, but Anon, my fear is that IF would affect my chronic fatigue. It actually helped you in this area so much. See, that is really interesting to me, and I'm glad to hear that because that is something people ask about sometimes too, and that is very interesting that it has helped you, and also interesting that it would kind of do the opposite of what you were afraid of, and that was kind of the thing with I feel like my metabolism has improved as far as like I used to feel cold a lot when I was overweight, but now it's like I stay pretty toasty, which I've heard. I've never had my metabolism tested one way or the other, but I just feel like it's good. And plus, I was able to lose the weight and keep it off too. And that was another thing that just reminded me. One thing that I had to deal with was other people's doubts, and luckily, this didn't happen too often, but there would be people who would, you tell them what you're doing. They ask. So I would tell them, like, well, here's what I'm doing. Here's how I'm losing weight. And they would just, try to scare me to death with, oh, aren't you afraid that it's going to kill your metabolism and then it's just, you're going to put all the weight back on? And of course, I was scared of that, but by that time I had had some level of success, but that can really trip you up if you haven't yet had success with it, or if you don't really know a lot of people who have done it. And again, that's one reason why I started this channel, was because at the time when I was looking for stuff about intermittent fasting, I didn't see a whole lot out there, especially about women. I saw plenty of guys doing it, but not very many women, and so of course that kind of increased the fear factor a little bit for me. But again, I just got to the point where it's like, I got to do something. Something's got to work. So, and the idea that something is going to be perfect, that there's that one perfect plan out there somewhere that's going to be perfectly healthy, and there's going to be no risk at all, and all that. There's risk in everything, and learning to just say, okay, what kind of level of risk am I comfortable with? Ultimately, I was kind of like, I'm all right with some risk, because I feel like the sure risks that I could foresee with like obesity related diseases, I could see that was like, okay, this will start to happen to you. Whereas, intermittent fasting, which hasn't been really well studied, I kind of felt like, hey, it seems like it's worth a shot, and I can always stop if I start to feel bad. But I started feeling so good. That was another thing. When you are doing something and you're losing weight and you're feeling really good during the process, it was like, well, this has to be fine, right? Like every other diet I've ever been on has been misery, right? Like I'm not happy with the foods I'm having to eat and all that. So, but there's risk. Even if you find, even if, let's say they find out like this certain way of eating is the perfectly healthy thing, Well, then you run a risk, and this is starting to happen. I heard about this on a podcast where these people are, when you're too focused on your eating plan to the point where you are basically not hanging around other people because you are afraid, not afraid of the interaction, but like you can't eat the same foods they are at all. That can be a bad thing, because then you're cutting yourself off from your social circle, and that's not healthy either. So the point is, there's always going to be some risk there, basically. Uh, let's see. So Melanie, uh, your blood glucose crashes at about 20. So see, and it's good that you're focused on, what is actually going to work for you, and not just like got to get to 20, because again, not necessarily a magic number. I would only add this. I would say that if you are doing like a 16-8, 18-6, that kind of thing, where you have that longer period of time, and I know in the beginning that does not seem like a long period of time, but stress eating, if you kind of struggle with that, really start to focus on getting stress eating under control. And so, like, if you need the longer window, that might be one area to focus on. But just my own thoughts on that, because some people have a hard time, with a longer eating window. They feel like, well, I can still eat just as much as I was eating before. It's just because you have that amount of time where you can really, digest the food and then eat again, and then, and do some, stress eating. So, okay. So let's see. Melanie, you said I have to work at 4 a.m. So good night. Oh, well, good night. Thank you for joining us. Henrietta, you joined us. It's 2 a.m. Oh, well, I'm so glad we've got you for the meanwhile, at least, until you fall asleep. Hello. So Dennis, you said doing OMAD with one 48-hour fast a week is going well. You've lost 35 pounds since mid-September. Wow, that's pretty quick, right? Let's see. That's, 6 weeks or so? Man, about 8 weeks, I guess. So but that is a lot of weight to have dropped. And so you're at 247 now, and your target is, let's see. Oh, no. You started at 247. You're now at 212, and your target is to be under 200 by the end of the new year. That's fantastic. You're walking 4 miles a day, 5 days a week. That is really, really good. And that, because that is, and that's with six weeks, and you've been dropping really consistently. I'm curious, Dennis, if you don't mind letting us know, and if you have those numbers, did you have like an initial big drop in weight, and then as the weeks went on, what are you losing? Or is it a consistent, what is that, like 5 pounds, 6 pounds a week? I mean, that's a lot. No, normally people are losing, like a pound a week or so. So I'm just curious. Now that is like so you're doing OMAD plus a 48-hour fast a week. So that's interesting. I would love to know what you're doing, or how fast you're dropping, rather. Valerie, I think that's my fear as well. I've tried I've tried what feels like so many other things to lose the weight and have been unsuccessful. I'm almost afraid to share what I'm doing because I feel like a broken record. Valerie, I totally understand that. I kept it under wraps. Like, I didn't even really realize I was doing it. My husband didn't even realize I was really doing intermittent fasting because he was at work. And so, like, he just didn't really notice that I wasn't eating breakfast. And then same with lunch, he was gone to the office. And so to him, it was like he didn't even know. I wasn't like trying to keep it from him per se. I think I was kind of embarrassed, like, what if this doesn't work? And, I really wanted to get the weight off, basically. Yeah, so it's hard. Like, I mean, certainly, I was on a diet from the time I was like 6 years old. It felt like I was always, I went to the doctor when I was a little kid and they put me on my first diet. And then from that point on, it was, it was either the low fat, the rice cakes, I went on the Zone. We tried Atkins for a little while. I didn't really like it. I've done diet pills like, had the most success with Metabolift, but it's banned now. Before that, I did Dexatrim. I mean, yeah, and I was, teenager. And so, and then gaining weight after I got married. I was actually at a good weight in college. And then I got married. My husband was deployed, put on some weight, so it was, and then once I started having kids, man, then the weight really piled on. So then it starts to get embarrassing. I agree. It's like, it was just, I kind of gotten to the point where I was like, I don't even know if I want to try because what if I try and I fail? And then it's really embarrassing, especially if I lost some and then regained it. I was really scared of that. But I got to a point again where I was like, well, I'm missing out on life. Like, that's a sure thing right now. And there's a phrase, and I heard it from Dave Ramsey originally, but it's change won't occur until the pain of same is greater than the pain of change, because change is painful, and you kind of have to have a really big motivator to make yourself change and do different things and stick with those changes over time, because when you feel like quitting, if you've got a good reason why you want to keep going, you'll keep going, and if you don't really know why you want to keep going, you'll probably quit. But let's see. Gia, I hope that I pronounced it right. Just started with IF about a week now. You're getting headaches. How long do you think it will take you to adjust? Well, here's what I say about headaches. I rarely got them. Sorry, I'm just going to take a swig of this. This is good stuff. Arrowhead. It's like a sparkling water, no carbs, no sweeteners or anything. I found it at Sam's, but pomegranate lemon. So anyway, let me go back and look at your question. How long will it take to adjust? So whenever I got headaches, I noticed that what had happened at the meal before, or if it was a time where I wasn't doing OMAD, like if it was a longer eating window, those were the times where I was really trying to get the scale to move faster, because again, I was losing at about a pound a week. And there were times in my journey where I was like, oh, I really, like, if I just ate a little less, if I just like cut back a little bit more. And so I wouldn't quite eat until I was full. Then what I started to notice was I would get headaches and I wouldn't sleep well. And sometimes I would feel nauseous. So for me, it's been important to, if I start to get headaches, I always say, hey, wait, you are not eating enough food. Now, the only other reason I get headaches is because I'm really sensitive to caffeine. So if I have more caffeine one day and then less the next, then I'm in trouble. So like I try to keep my coffee consumption the same every day. Not at the same time necessarily, but just the same amount. Like three cups a day is generally what I do. So that might be something else too. Like maybe even if you're not normally sensitive to that, intermittent fasting might make you a little bit more sensitive to it. But generally speaking, the adjustment window, a lot of people say really within 2 to 3 weeks. Some people it takes like six weeks. I would say just focus on being consistent for like 6 weeks with intermittent fasting before you get too far out in left field as far as thinking you need to change things. But give yourself time. It's a different thing that you're doing, and your body sometimes needs time to adjust. I would also recommend, you didn't mention how long your fasting window is, but if you're feeling uncomfortable and it's just like, and it's hard, I would recommend start with a shorter fasting window. Just look at this as like you are practicing, you're getting your reps in. It's just like a muscle. You are building your fasting muscle. And it's a skill that's learned over time. So don't worry about it. If you can only do short fasts, just do those short fasts consistently. And then you can lengthen it out as you feel comfortable. Okay, Kathy, you said, sorry if you've answered this a million times before, but I'm not 40 yet. I tried so hard last year, but lost nothing, wondering how much of it is age. Well, first of all, no, I just turned 34 yesterday, so I'm not 40 yet. However, I will say this. I have talked to 70-year-old women who are out there, they are doing intermittent fasting, and they are losing weight. I understand that it does get more difficult as the years go by, but I think a lot of that gets into people's heads, and then it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you keep telling yourself, oh, it's like impossible to lose the weight, after you turn 40, then you're going to do those things that is going to make it impossible. Just focus on being consistent with your plan. Focus on what your plan is. Figure out your plan. Be really, really consistent with it, and you'll be able to lose weight. It maybe affects it slightly, but it's really, it's not like a thing that makes it impossible. And I mean, just based on 70-year-old people, women even that are doing this successfully. You can go back and look at some of the success stories that I've highlighted. A lot of those people have been over 50 even. So, yeah. But like to give you an example of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, a thing I would tell myself all the time was, oh, well, nobody loses weight after their third kid. And that kept me from really trying to lose the weight, because I really kind of thought, what's the point? Everybody keeps, weight on after the third kid. And then I had to kind of prove myself wrong. And so what I would encourage you to do is like, go Google success stories, women who have lost weight, who are over 40 or over 50. Sometimes it's even better to do that, like go even an age bracket above you and prove it to yourself that you can do it. That it's not like, some sort of thing you cannot overcome. Let's see. Yeah. And I should say that once I started telling friends and family about intermittent fasting, generally speaking, they were very, very supportive, but it took me a while before I could really tell people with any kind of level of confidence about what I was doing. Let's see. Teresa, did you have to deal with self-sabotage at all? I do very well following my plan, but then when I start losing weight and you're feeling good, self-sabotage creeps in. So the time where I experienced that, I don't know if I would call it self-sabotage, but here's one thing that maybe this is kind of what you're talking about. So in 2015, I started going to the gym every day. I weighed myself in February 2015, and that was the point where I was like, okay, I'm getting this weight off. I'm serious now. And I started going to the gym every day. I was doing, really hard workouts. I was doing intermittent fasting, and I lost about 20 pounds like that. I mean, like it was a pound a week, but still the weight came off. And instead of just saying, hey, you're doing the right things, I kind of went way off in left field and started trying to shortcut it and make things really hard on myself, and really got obsessed with calorie counting and macros and just being obsessive, instead of just sticking with what works. Now, I didn't think I was self-sabotaging, but and I think part of that was really getting in a hurry, but there could be. If you find that you're sabotaging yourself, it might just be that you're afraid of success, which is a thing. Sometimes it's a lot scarier to succeed than it is to fail. And so, know that going in, that sometimes the thing you're afraid of is the thing you think you want, but then you can end up sabotaging yourself. So, ask yourself, like, maybe like, why am I afraid of that? Like, why am I afraid of losing weight? I had fears about losing weight. I was afraid that it was going to make my marriage worse. Like, we had a perfectly wonderful marriage. I was afraid I might screw it up if I lost weight. I was afraid that I might become like a bad person. Not that I thought that skinny people were bad, but I thought, what if, it was going to make me into a jerk? Which is crazy that I would think that. But I did think that. I was afraid of, I just didn't know what it would be like, really. And so, again, I had to just tell myself, those are all theoretical. And what I do know is I'm not happy right now with, where I'm at weight-wise. I was, not taking pictures with my kids and stuff. Like, try to find pictures of me, like, in the picture with my kids. It's tough to find them when I was overweight. And I, at that point I said, well, I'm changing it. I don't even care. It's a risk I'm willing to take. So, let's see. Aw, Enid, you stress ate. That's okay. You'll be all right. You just little improvements. Don't beat yourself up. Uh, yeah, and see, and focus on the positives for the day. Focus on your victories. Clarissa, fasting feels way too easy for me. It's almost too good to be true. That's a doubt that I have. That is such a good point. That was something that I was like I had to deal with because really it was like after a lifetime of dieting and like drinking like protein shakes. We didn't have a blender, so my mom would just like stir it up with a spoon. And this chocolate protein shake, it was like mixed with, I think, water. I can't remember. It was when we were on the zone, and it had all these powdery chunks in it. And I would just like knock it back in like two big gulps, and I just got to the point where it would almost gag me to do it. And so I would put myself through that though, just to lose the weight. I did lose some on that plan, or eat weird food combinations in the hopes that, oh, if we balance out this, then I'll lose weight. Like eating tuna fish with a Pop Tart, like weird combinations, right? But I'll do it. I want to lose the weight. And so when it was like, whoa, intermittent fasting works, you mean like all I have to do is just not eat right now? And then when I get to my mealtime, I can eat whatever I want, like no limits on what I can eat, or what kind of foods and carbs and all that. It was almost like, what's the catch? And I think that can be a big stumbling block when something feels too easy. You can self-sabotage. You can say, well, it's obviously, I think that's kind of a trap too. If it feels so easy, then you think, well, since this is so easy, then if I do this really hard thing, I'll have even faster results. And that's just not how it happens. So, let's see. I can feel this way as well. Valerie, you say, I pushed my window back 1.5 hours tonight and wasn't really hungry. Yeah, that's something that happens. And then you might find that sometimes that's not always the case. But I remember when I was pushing my window out, there were times where I could push it out further. Just all of a sudden, it's like, oh, I can do that. And then other times it was like really, really just a little bit. And some people have even said like if they can just beat their last fast by a minute, and I think that's great. Like if you just look at small improvements over time, and also really focusing on when are you actually hungry, not just like when are you used to eating, but when are you actually hungry, and listening to your body. Anon, but anon. Yes, once you hit the zone, fasting is so easy and amazing, not only weight-wise, but energy, mental clarity, simplifying your life, good stuff all around. I agree. Like, my life, I was able to fill it up with so many good things because I wasn't eating all the time. Just so many things that I would tell myself, oh, I don't really have time to read. I don't really have time to draw. I don't have time to, do this, that, or the other. And then when I was fasting, I was like, oh, wow, I have all the time in the world right now to do these things. So, and yeah, the mental focus, the things you can get done, and the energy levels, it's crazy to me how much more energy I have with fasting than I do if I just eat, at normal eating times. And Teresa and Valerie, you're talking about the figuring out who to tell and all that. I think that's something. Don't rush it. You'll know when you're ready to tell people. And like I said, it took me, like, I was down to where I wanted to be weight wise, like in November 2016. And at that point, I was like, okay, I can tell friends and family. It took me another whole year to get on YouTube, and even that was very, very tough. And now I'm fine. Like I tell a lot of people about it. Anybody who asks, I say, well, this is what I do. But it takes a while, and don't rush it. Because what can happen is if you're not sure, and then you tell somebody, then they can talk you out of it, and then you can knock yourself out of success. Oh, Henrietta, oh, you have a hair salon. Maybe one of these days I can come to your hair salon. Yeah, I guess that does come up a lot, because what do women talk about? Men, men and diets, right? So that is That's great though that you've got that platform. I think I hope that this becomes like a widespread thing, because I mean, I've just heard so many women say, I can't believe that I've done all these other diets. And it was like this simple solution is kind of staring you right in the face. A lot of people have even said, like, I kind of used to do this. I didn't realize that I was doing, OMAD. I wasn't trying to do anything, but I was at a really good weight, and it was just because I was eating, once a day. And I think that's certainly true. Like when I looked back at my college days, because I was at a good weight there, I was walking a lot. I was walking all over campus all the time. And a lot of times I wasn't eating like 3 meals a day. I was eating, 2 meals a day. And a lot of times it was like a late lunch and then supper. And I was a lot more active back then too, like doing, playing pickup games of basketball and ultimate frisbee and all that kind of thing. So yeah, it's very interesting how if you kind of look back at a time when you were at a healthy weight, you kind of copy what you were doing back then, maybe, as long as you were happy with the eating and everything. Anon, but anon, no matter how small your progress on a daily or weekly basis, looking back can be a real eye-opener as to how far you've really come. That is so true, especially when you're in the moment, especially if you're not exactly where you want to be yet, and you've lost some, but not where you want to be. I remember that was so tough I was right above 200, and I stayed there for a really long time, like from July of 2015 till like January. I think it was in January that I got below 200. It was either January or February. So it took me a while to get under 200. And that was a tough thing. Like, even though I had lost, it was like, wow, you've lost some weight. It can still be tough to motivate yourself to keep going. But yeah, if you can just say, I am making progress, and then also not only depending on the scale for progress. I took progress pictures of myself, which was nice. Those don't show as much on a week-to-week basis, but it can be good. Like if you compare, well, here's what I used to look like to here's what I'm looking like right now. How your clothes are fitting, that was harder for me because I was wearing clothes that were way too tight because I didn't want to go up to the right size. But looking at other victories that you're having, even just self-control, even if it's like, well, you know what, I can sit there and not eat that cookie that's on the countertop right now because I know how to fast and I know how to stick with it, and focusing on that, like focus on all the victories you have. Dennis, I'm average. Okay, so good. You're telling me. So you're averaging 3 to 4 pounds a week, and you've done it for 10 weeks. Okay. So you had a couple of family dinners where you didn't restrict anything, and you had Halloween candy. Holiday season is coming, and I don't plan on restricting my meals. I'm with you on that. Like I'm gonna take the holidays pretty much, any time off that I can. I do that on holidays. It's just like when whatever comes up, I'm taking it off, and we're gonna have nice family fun during the holiday season. So that is really great, Dennis. Congratulations, because I'm telling you that is a really good clip. And so that's great. It sounds like you are like right on track. Congratulations. So anon but anon, looking ahead at your goals can seem like they're so far off, but look back over a year and it seems to have flown by. That is true. And like one thing that helped me was to break it down as to like, okay, just in 5-pound increments, and say, okay, at a pound a week, I should hit this at about, this date. And I just went through and I tried to set these little, I made up my mind that if I didn't hit those goals, I'm not going to be mad at myself, because you can't control how fast the scale moves. You can control your eating, you can control sticking to your plan, you can control your exercise. But as far as like, I cannot say, by next week I'm going to be down 1 pound. Like I just can't. But I can do all those things that will hopefully make that happen. And so that was really helpful to have those 5-pound increments. It helped make a huge goal a lot more manageable. But yeah, and then and certainly keeping track of your I still have in Google Docs, and I love Google Docs because of this, because it keeps all your documents in one spot. It's it's in the cloud and everything. But I had just a Google Doc that had all the different accomplishments. Like, I had my different goals, and I had the 5 pound increment thing, and I would mark through it and say achieved on, and whatever the date was. I had checkpoints that I would do, and I would say, okay, I've got I think on the 20th of every month for a long time, I would say, okay, here's where I'm at with these various, like, this pair of pants. Like, I had a smaller pair of pants I was trying to get into, and so like, at first I couldn't even get it above my knees, and then it was like, okay, well, I can get them halfway up my thighs, and then I can get them all the way up, but I can't get them buttoned or zip. Well, now I can get them buttoned, but it felt like it was gonna bust a button, maybe shoot somebody's eye out or something. So, and then eventually I got to the point where I could actually get them on, get them zipped, and actually wear them out. And seeing that progress is helpful, I think. I think you're totally right, anon but anon. So, Dennis, you work from home, so it's easy to eat once a day, anytime between 12 and 3. So, yeah, so that's interesting, Dennis. Some people find it very, very challenging to be at home because, it depends on what your job is, I suppose, like how much structure is there. But, like, I found, man, I love intermittent fasting, or OMAD especially, because it's like I don't even have to think about it. I can work and be super productive all day, and I don't even have to think about food until the evening. But then some people, I think, are like, oh, without any kind of structure, they kind of feel like, and there's food right there. Homeschooling, I'm a homeschool mom, and other homeschool moms have talked about, like, oh, that's tough because if your kids are there eating. I wonder, Dennis, do you have people around you at home who are maybe eating on a regular schedule? Let's see, Henrietta, I find headaches go if I take sea salt under the tongue and water. Oh, interesting. I'll have to try that because I am planning on trying to, like, a 5-day fast. And what I would like to do is not have coffee at all during that and not take Tylenol, but I have a feeling if I try to do that too suddenly, I'm gonna have really horrible headaches and I won't be able to stick to the fast. So I don't know. We'll see. Let's see. So, Dennis, I weigh each day at the same time and measure your neck, waist, hips once a month. Weight loss has slowed, but the measurements show improvements. And that's another good point. There are going to be improvements. Sometimes the scale kind of stalls out, and you'll see in Joe, in his interview, this is going to be coming out later this week. He's had plateaus that last 6 weeks, and it's not because he's not being consistent. It's because the body does that sometimes. The body's like, whoa, 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 we're changing too much here, and you just have to continue to be consistent and go right along with your plan and just not change anything. And that can be very difficult. Talk about doubts. Plateaus cause huge doubts because you'll probably think, I need to change everything. And it's really the time when you need to change nothing and be really patient and just focus on being really, 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 really consistent. It's like a test. I feel like sometimes it's like, this is just a test to test my resolve. Because what can happen most of the time is when people start changing their plan, they start making it harder and harder and harder on themselves, and then you can't stick to the plan. So thank you for sharing that, Dennis. Julie, my original motivator was to be able to walk and stand for long periods of time. So I watched my son graduate from the Citadel this coming May. I'm down 24 pounds and trying hard for another 20 by then. That is awesome. And let's see, by May, okay, and we've got all of December, so through May. So I think you can make it. I really do. Just go slow and steady and focus on that. That's awesome, though, and congratulations on 24 pounds down. That is fantastic. And really, and that is such a good thing to focus on those things. I want to be able to do this, and I can't tell you how worth it that is. To, like, I was yesterday I was kind of shopping. Like, I went to get some shoes for myself because it was my birthday, and then I walked I was parked in this parking lot. I had to walk all the way across the parking lot over to a Walmart. I walked all the way back to the car. Then I walked from the car all the way over to the Sam's Club and then all the way back. And it just reminded me of how walking to a store, inside a store, used to be such a chore. It was so taxing, and it was like on my body. It was just like, I just want to sit down. I don't want to be here, and now it's not even a thing. Like, I walk 6 miles every day. Like, it's not even, even though I have already walked 6 miles, I'm like, this is nothing. And so it's totally worth it. I will say that, like, losing the weight and just being successful with it, it's worth it. It really is. It's just not a thing anymore. I just don't have to think about, like, I wonder if I'm going to be able to hold out and really, am I going to be annoyed with everybody because I'm tired and I just want to go sit down? So it's totally worth it. Let's see. Anon, but anon. I'm 50. Don't know how that happened, but but I can attest to the fact it's harder to lose. Nevertheless, this is free and it feels good, so it doesn't matter if it takes more time. Exactly. Yeah. And it takes time. I think people grossly, for the most part, underestimate how fast it's gonna, or how much time it's gonna take to lose the weight. Most people lose between, like a pound, maybe 2 pounds a week. It really depends. Like, just, in the Facebook group, I asked this question of the people who are in there doing intermittent fasting and everything. Most people in there are losing, a pound a week. Some of them are losing at a higher rate than that. Most of them are doing it at less, like, so a pound and a half a week or less. Very few people, I don't know, maybe like one person said they're consistently losing more than 2 pounds a week. If you are losing faster, that's fantastic, and just keep doing what you're doing. But I think a lot of people lose weight a lot slower than what we really think is possible, or that like, we think, oh man, everybody else is dropping 5 pounds a week. It's just not true, I don't think. Clarissa, the free matters to me too. Yeah, I'm not putting one more dollar into the diet industry. I know. That is a really good thing about intermittent fasting is, man, talk about your food bill being less. Which, I mean, I still have kids, and they're my kids and husband, they're eating on a regular schedule. But man, I can see how if it's you and your husband, or if it's just you doing it, man, your food bill could be like so cheap. Hey, Julie. Oh, thank you for the happy birthday wish. It was a wonderful birthday. Wonderful. Let's see. I get the marriage thing. I was afraid my husband wouldn't support me. What was I thinking? Best friend for 27 years. Of course he supports me. He's in your cheering section. I think that's... thank you for saying that, because I think what can happen is we just get embarrassed, or... yeah, like maybe we think, well, he won't support me or whatever. It makes it much easier if you can clearly communicate to your spouse, husband, whatever. Here's what I'm doing. I am not going to eat. I'm not going to have snacks at night. I will eat my meal, and that's it. Like if you're doing OMAD, or I eat between these hours, so plan accordingly. And they can be a huge cheerleader for you. But instead, it's sometimes like because we're embarrassed, or because we're like, oh, what if they sabotage me or something? It's crazy, right? It's like they're your best friend. So that's such a good point. He will be your cheering section, or she, if whatever the case might be. But enlist their help and their support, and because especially if they know what you're going through, and I know that's hard. Oh man, it was so hard for me to talk about my weight with my husband, even though we talk about everything. I think it was just because I had regained the weight so many times. I was just embarrassed about it at that point. But really just getting over yourself, basically, and saying, you know what, here's what I'm trying to accomplish, and it would be really helpful if, maybe like if you could make your own meals for a while until I get used to this fasting thing, or take care of the kids' meals for a while I'm getting used to fasting. or just please don't ask me to eat when it's my fasting window, and just being very upfront and clear with them about what you need from them. I think it's tough to do, but so helpful when you do. Um, let's see, Valerie. Some of my doubts lately have been that I'm finally getting consistent with my plan, but hubby is now 3 days a week. So he is at. Let's see. So he is at. So and he is so active that he can eat whatever whenever, and I can't. Okay, so I've dealt with that because my husband is a skinny guy. He's always been thin, has never had to worry at all about his weight. So that's been tough because it's like he doesn't have to try at all, can eat whatever, and I'm like, oh, I'm trying all this stuff, and so that was tough. But one thing I had to tell myself is, well, I'm not him, basically, and he may be able to eat a certain way, but I can't, not and maintain, the weight loss and all that. And so, and one thing I noticed with my husband, actually, the more I started looking at what is he actually eating in his portions, he doesn't eat as much as I really thought he did at first. But that's just my own personal experience. But then, and not resenting that too, Valerie, that's something I had to deal with, was like, I used to kind of resent, or I really used to resent, like, how can you eat anything you want, and here I am, I'm trying so hard, and it's easy for you and it's hard for me. That's not their fault, first of all, and again, like I said, it was a little bit deceptive. I thought that he was eating so much and everything, but when I really started to compare how much am I eating versus how much is he eating, and I ate a lot faster, and so a lot of times I thought, oh, he's still eating and I'm done. So then it seemed like he was eating more, but really he was just a slower eater too. Slim Fast. I think I had one Slim Fast shake one time. We never did the program though, like me and my mom. Uh, oh, yeah. I've never tasted any any diet food, any kind of protein bar, anything where I thought, oh, this tastes good. So, uh, oh, Herbalife, I've never tried that, Susan, but it's the worst. So that's good to know. I will not try that. Um, oh, Enid, that's so funny about the comments. I tell you what, though, husbands, like, give them credit, right? They don't, a lot of times, unless the guy has ever had a weight problem, he has no idea what you're going through. And the only way is if you tell him. So tell him, like, he needs to know. It will help you. Um, oh, yeah, Medifast. I have heard Medifast is really, really expensive. Never done it. But yeah, and see, that's a thing too. And sometimes people just need to spend the money. There's like a psychological thing that can happen when you actually spend money on something. You are more committed to it because you actually paid for something. But yeah, I say go for the free option, right? Teresa, I think mine is definitely figures. Thank you for sharing. It only made me feel like it makes me feel like I'm not the only one who's felt the same way and has worked through it. Yeah, you're not the only one, and do work through it. Really sit down, journal things out. I'm afraid that this will happen. I am, and write it out. And then a lot of times what can happen is, like, when you actually write it out and you see it on paper, it's like, I'm scared of that, like, and sometimes it's not something where you feel silly, but sometimes it is. So I would highly encourage you to journal it out. Carlene, uh, yeah, that's so good. Y'all got some good husbands. That's so good. Hey, Stephen, uh, I'm glad that you got another hole punched in your belt today. That's awesome. Um, so let's see, Valerie. I actually make a checklist every day on my planner: 10,000 steps, 2-hour eating window, weigh in, and it keeps you consistent. That is such. Oh, thank you for saying that. Checklist. I love checklists, and I have on my checklist one. I mean, now the 6 miles a day thing. It used to be on there. Now I don't even need it on there because it's so well ingrained into my routine. I don't need it on there. But one thing I do is I have a task that says, did you stick to your plan yesterday? Did you stick to your eating plan yesterday? I found that was really, really helpful for kind of bringing awareness to myself about when I was going off plan. And I was always okay. I always did it with intentionality, but it was also good to kind of, it kind of, let's just helps you remember, like, okay, you're going off plan and that's okay. But realize that, if you're stalling out right now, you've had a lot of off plan days lately. And just understanding that. It took the mystery out of plateaus and stuff for me. So yeah, I love checklists. I think anything that if you're a checklist person and you're trying to get into any kind of habit, put it on the checklist. Whatever the thing is that you're trying to incorporate into your life. I love checklists. I'm such a checklist person. Let's see. Yeah, strides. I always forgot to like check it and stuff. I'm not a very good like other apps. I have Asana. I love Asana, but that's like how I do my work and stuff. I keep my stuff organized that way. So I like to have kind of like one place to do that. But Strides does appeal to me. I just never could incorporate it because I had this other checklist thing going on. Steven, that's great. Joe, OMAD Revolution, Joe Holman, sorry. Let's see. Henrietta, thank you. You'll watch it later. Well, good night, Henrietta. Thank you for joining us. Dion, I've reached that last 13 pounds plateau, and of course I'm worrying I will be stuck here. Okay, so first of all, stay consistent, Dion. You're doing great. You've got 13 pounds to go, and I'm telling you, those last 13 pounds, usually, and I don't know where your BMI is at, but I'm telling you, as I approached the normal BMI, so for me, that was like, once I started getting down into the 150s at 5'6", that's my height, 5'6", sorry, that is when the weight just like, it just started to kind of creep off. And it was like about a third of a pound a week when I went from like 157 down to where I'm at right now, which is 140. But so anyway, Dion, just stay consistent and you'll get where you want to go. Just don't do that thing where people quit and they try to like, let me do something really, really hard. Because remember, you want to be able to maintain wherever you land, right? So keep doing those things that you can maintain over the long term. Okay, let's see. Anon won't be changing the plan. I can't budge the scale, but my clothes fit better and I kind of feel soft, which is what happens just before the scale catches up. The whoosh. Yeah, thank you for mentioning the whoosh. That is totally something that happens. And especially because sometimes people even notice a slight upward fluctuation right before the whoosh. It's like, I don't know if it's been scientifically studied or anything, but it's like this water weight gain that happens, and you kind of hold on to it for a while, and then it's just whoosh, you go down. So yeah, that definitely does happen. I'm totally not going to get to all the comments. I'm sorry. Thank you guys so much for all your comments, for being a part of this. And you guys, Steven's in here. He's a great one to follow. He does OMAD. He has really done a lot of good for his life. Go check out his story. We've got before and after, like a success story on this channel about him, and he's got his own channel. And he plays piano and he does awesome like show tunes and stuff like that. So yeah. Okay. So your family does eat normally, Dennis. Okay. Well. It's time to wrap up. So remember to take action on your fear and your doubts, and figure out what's really scaring you, and then you gotta deal with them and move forward. And be sure to join the Facebook group if you haven't already. And it's a great place. A lot of encouraging folks over there. And if you haven't checked out my book, check out my book if you're interested in that. And if you're interested in private coaching, I do that as well. Let's see. I think that does it. I really appreciate all you guys out there. Keep sticking with the plan. I know we're heading into the holidays, but that's okay. Just stick with your plan. You're going to be fine. Enjoy the time with your family. Don't let the family things like stress you out. You know how to lose weight. And if you gain a little bit during the holidays, you still know how to get it off. Okay, I will talk to you guys later.